Amen. Thank you so much, Daniel. I always kid Daniel, he out-preaches me during the announcements, So when I get up here, I feel like I'm falling a fireball. And we have so much fun over here on the side of the stage. We kind of do our own little worship thing over there in that corner. And the last 2 weeks, I have been like that coach on the sidelines that has to hold back the head coach. Y'all ever see those guys? They call them the holdback coach, and they're sitting there holding on to their belt loops, trying to keep them from jumping on stage. So last week it was Isaac, and this week it was Daniel, and both of them got away from me and got out here on the stage really quick. But it just goes to show you how much fun that we are able to have, and what a blessing it is to be able to worship together. Now I'm really excited as we're coming down to really about the last 4 messages that we're going to be doing in the series, the matter of the heart and the heart of the matter, because this week I'm going to be talking about gratitude. Next week I'm going to be talking about generosity, I'm going to be talking about giving. And then the last message within kind of the 3 is about generosity, and how do you develop a true heart of generosity, and never think of generosity as just being what you can do from a financial perspective, but it's from a lot of different perspectives. So when I was working on this part of the series, I was thinking about how all of these things kind of link together, that it starts out with gratitude, and then it moves into actually giving, and then it moves into developing a mindset of generosity, and how God has a unique way of being able to bless all of that. And so today, we're going to start out with gratitude. I'm going to talk to you about what I believe that gratitude is, and then how you can begin to develop it, and that really, when it comes down to it, that gratitude, it starts out, it's command in Scripture, a command that we're to have an attitude of gratitude in our lives, and I'll explain to you why as we go through this today. And I read a quote by a lady named Melody Batty, and she said, "Gratitude makes sense of our past, and then it brings peace for today." I mean, you think about it. When you start looking at your life, gratitude will make sense of your past. Have you ever looked back on your life and you see how God did certain things and how He just connected things together? And I can remember being in college, and I heard this existentialist philosopher named Soren Kierkegaard. And he said, you live life going forward, but you understand it when you look backward. You look back and you see how what some people would just say is a chance meeting took place, or you just happened to be in a certain spot at the right time. And of course, some people would call those a coincidence. I believe that when you're a child of God, a coincidence is when God chooses to remain anonymous, and He just works certain things out for you. So she said, gratitude makes sense of your past. When you and I look backward, we understand all the different ways that God brought things together. And what you'll also find so many times is that the thing that was your biggest disappointment in life actually turned out to be your biggest appointment in life. But it was a disappointment in that moment. And I look back on my own life, and I'm filled with gratitude for flunking out of Kennesaw Junior College. Because when I flunked out of Kennesaw Junior College, I was 17 years old. I mean, man, I was at the top of everybody's list for I'm going to succeed in life. You flunked out at 17, and so then when I turned 18, I tried to go and join the military, and I got turned down there because I had an eye injury that prohibited me from getting into the military. I mean, y'all, they took Forrest Gump. So imagine what, that does to your self-esteem, right? And so because of that, I went and started doing a dead-end jobs that I did for several years. And then in the middle of doing that dead-end job, I heard a commercial one night about, are you tired of your dead-end job? And I thought, yes, I am. Do you wish that you had a job that was more exciting? Yes, I do. Then what you can do is you can become a disc jockey. Now, let me tell you why that was bizarre. I'm the kid that in school, if there was an oral report, I would get sick that day. I would find a way not to show up. And so many people are a little bit shocked to find out I'm really more of an introvert than you could ever imagine. And you say, well, how in the world do you sit up on a stage and do what you do? This is the place I feel the most comfortable. But you put me at like a party and things like that, and I'm absolutely terrible at things like that. And Robin has a phrase. Your wife probably has a phrase for you at certain times. And when I'm zoning out, Robin will go, "You're iking out." You're iking out, which means it's time to re-engage, right? And so I try to do that, but I'm usually much more introverted. So because I flunk out of college and I begin to work dead-end jobs, and I happened to hear this commercial one night, I go to school to learn how to become a disc jockey, never dreaming in a million years that that was going to lead to me developing a speaking career, becoming a communicator, and never dreaming all the different ways that God was going to take that thread, and now He's woven it throughout my entire life. And, you know, it came out of, you know, a situation that looked really bad. So gratitude has a way of making sense of our past. Now I understand why I went through the things that I went through. And, you know, people would try to make me feel better about flunking out of college and go, well, you probably weren't trying. Yes, I was. I was trying as hard as I could. I was just ill-equipped for it. And then it brings peace today. Gratitude brings peace today, but here's the next part, and it creates a vision for tomorrow. So it really works in the three principal time frames of your life. When you look back at your past, when you're dealing right now with your present, but of course, wanting to be able to have a vision for tomorrow. And having a vision is a preferable view of what tomorrow is going to look like. And the Bible tells us different ways that we can do that. In 1 Thessalonians 5:18, the Apostle Paul said, "In everything give thanks. In everything give thanks. For this is not just a suggestion, this is the will of God for you in Christ Jesus." In other words, even your biggest disappointment in life, God has allowed you to go through that in your life. God is sovereign. God is omnipotent. He's omnipresent. He's omniscient. He knows everything that's going to go on in your life. And Paul is saying to the church at Thessalonica, and it's so cool that last fall I stood in this place, in everything that you and I experience, give thanks. For this is the will of God for you in Christ Jesus. And so if you are a leader in particular, if you become a person of gratitude, it will absolutely transform the teams that you are leading. If you become a parent that has gratitude, it'll make all the difference in the world. The way that you look at your family, the way you treat your family, the words that you speak to them. And of course, we all know that words can make all the difference in someone's life, especially if you've read the book, Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And one of those love languages is words of affirmation. You know, people can speak 5 different languages, the way that he talks about in the book. And I'm very fortunate. Robin speaks all 5. So if I make sure that I'm doing all 5, I stay in really well. But John Maxwell made this statement. He said, what we appreciate appreciates, and what we depreciate ends up being depreciated. And that's why I want you to understand today that one of the most important components that you have in your life is to be able to develop a heart of gratitude, because gratitude makes all the difference in the world. In Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last, he said, the true price of leadership is the willingness to place the needs of others above your own. And that's where gratitude starts. It's the way that you look at other people. You know, Marlon is always fond of saying that love starts when you look at someone, that's where love begins. He goes on and says, great leaders truly care about those that they're privileged to lead. And they understand the true cost of leadership, and the leadership privilege comes at the expense of self-interest. And so leadership will implode on itself apart from having gratitude. You know, it can't be all about you. And I think really having a richness of life is congruent and contiguous to having that spirit of gratitude. So develop an attitude of gratitude. Give thanks in everything that happens to you, knowing that every step forward is a step toward helping you to achieve something that is bigger and better than what your current situation is. That's what a great writer named Brian Tracy said about having that attitude of gratitude. So let me tell you what gratitude can do. Gratitude can transform common days into days of thanksgiving. It can just take a common day and make it a day of thanksgiving. There was a sports writer in Atlanta, many years, the Atlanta Journal, named Furman Bisher. And I can remember back, even when I was a kid, I would always look forward to his article about Thanksgiving because it was just little sentences about things that he was thankful for. And it would be things that, you know, you might not think about that much, and then the way that he would crystallize it, you'd go, yeah, that was pretty cool. See, like for a kid like me growing up, one of the smells that I can always remember was the smell of burning leaves. You know, back in those days, we'd rake up our leaves before everybody thought climate change was going to kill us all, and you'd have that smell in the fall of those, you know, those burning leaves. He'd talk about, you know, that he was thankful for the football player that instead of spiking the ball in the end zone would walk over and hand it to the referee. And he would just go through this list of different things that he was thankful for. And now today we have someone that writes in the Marietta Daily Journal named Dick Yarbrough that I admire so much. And he does a column that's similar. And the whole idea is that gratitude will take things that are very common and make them uncommon. In our language here, it takes ordinary things and makes them extraordinary things. Gratitude will turn a routine job into a joy, and it'll change ordinary opportunities into blessings. And so William Arthur Ward said, gratitude is a behavior. And what do? You develop behaviors in your life. It's not a feeling. Gratitude is a command. And he said gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It will turn denial into acceptance, chaos to order, and confusion to clarity. So he said gratitude's not an option. It is not circumstantial. But what it does do is it shifts your perspective, and it can turn a simple meal into a feast. You know, that's why we should take time to just simply pray and thank God, you know, for the food that we have. And if you were in the world that I'm in for a lot of my week is dealing with people that are in poverty. And every single week at Must Ministries, where I'm the president and CEO, someone in the back was explaining to me today that they were telling their family member who goes to church here that I'm also involved there, and they were surprised by that. So Must is an organization that's been around 54 years helping people in poverty. Every week we give away, every day we give away 3.5 tons of food on average every day. We put pantries inside of schools. We have 19 hub sites. We serve over 100 schools where school social workers know the families that have a need. And we're feeding the entire family. We're not just doing the backpack idea, which is tremendous, that feeds the student, but we help to feed the entire family. We have Must Mobile that goes out into the community. And the first year, full year that we were operating that, 22 62,000 people were able to get their food that way. Last year, 535,000 summer meals went out to kids that would not have been able to eat. It averaged out to somewhere between 7,000 and 7,500 students a week, were being blessed that way. And so there's the different ways that we feed. We have 3 standalone food pantries. We have a kitchen where we serve over 300 meals a day in a homeless shelter. And so have you stopped to think how blessed you are when you walk into a restaurant or when you're there in your home and you've got plenty of food? That's why, he was saying, if you have gratitude, it'll turn your meal into a feast. It will turn your house into a home, and it can turn a stranger into a friend. So he said, think of gratitude as a behavior. It's not a feeling. And never allow your problems, forgive me, to prevent you from saying thank you to other people. And if you go back up and you look at that verse that we started with, when it says, in everything give thanks. In everything give thanks. It doesn't say that give thanks for everything. Instead, it says give God thanks in everything. In everything that you're experiencing and in everything that you're going through. James 1:17 teaches us this: every good thing given and every perfect gift is from above. It's coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation and there is no shifting shadow. So here's what you and I can learn to do, and this is kind of where I want to spend the majority of my time this morning, is helping you to know how to behave if it's a behavior. How do you behave your way into gratitude? How do you and I begin to get that mind change? And what is gratitude? At the end of the day, what is gratitude going to do for me? And by the way, go back to the message on a heart of humility, because gratitude always flows from a heart of humility. That when you realize who God is and when you realize who you are. So here's what gratitude will do. It expands your energy, no question about it. The greater the gift of gratitude and the behavior that you express of gratitude, the more energy you're going to have in your life. There's just something that connects energy to being a person of gratitude. It will also allow you to express respect for other people and to other things. If you begin to understand that God is putting people in your path to give you an opportunity to express gratitude to them, then it's going to lift your level of respect. And it'll also elevate your confidence. And so gratitude, one writer said, gratitude lifts a person in a leadership position out of the mud. And in Philippians 2:14, we're told, do all things without complaining and without arguments. So here's how it works in relationships. Gratitude starts out by saying, I see you. And you know that little lesson that I've taught you before that I learned as a 7th grade school patrol, person was you stop, you look, and you listen. Still the greatest leadership lesson I've ever learned. Learn to stop what you're doing, look at people, and then listen to their story. So when you have gratitude for someone else, the first thing you're going to be doing is you're going to be saying to them, I see you. You're going to be saying to them, you matter. You're going to be saying to them, you belong. You know, if you go out here in the main hall, the East Hall, you'll see up over the top of the roof line right there, the ceiling, it says you belong here. You belong here. See, we believe as a church that people belong here. And you heard Daniel talking earlier about the conference that was held here this week. And we had an all-staff meeting this week, and I was telling our staff, I said, one of the things that I've learned is that when you're a leader, you look for patterns, that God has a way of bringing patterns along. And if you're a leader, you need to learn to discover what are those patterns. And here's a pattern that I've noticed at Piedmont Church. And when you think about this, it's pretty remarkable. We're helping people that otherwise might not be helped, not because another church doesn't care, but it's because another church is maybe not equipped as well as our church is equipped to be able to make a difference. And I'm talking about people with special needs. You know, just recently we took what had been 5,000 square feet of space for our children's program and preschool, and we were able to turn it into 15,000 square feet. And with our new building out there, we have 2 rooms that are there for children with special needs. And we now have the space to be able to say to families, we want you to come here and we want you to bring your children, we want you to bring your family to our church. You belong here. We're saying to them, I see you, and I see that you have these needs, and you know what? You matter to us, and you belong right here in this place. And so we started, you know, that kind of work back when Aaron Collier was here. And now it's taken a whole nother level step up. But we don't just do it here at our church, because now I think it is we put in 45 or 46 sensory perception rooms in our schools, in Marietta City, in Cobb County, and in Cherokee County. As a matter of fact, Marlon and I went last week, and we were recognized again by the Marietta School Board for all the work that we're doing in the schools. And that thrills us that they give us the opportunity to partner with them. And of course, a few weeks ago, Grant Rivera was here on our stage, who's the superintendent of schools, thanking you as a congregation for the investment that you make, because those rooms that cost us $2,500 to $3,000, depending on how we equip them, and we don't charge the school anything. We're just glad to be able to be in that space. And because we're in that space, do you see the pattern? Here's students with special needs, and we're in the schools. We're not just inside the building. And then a group comes along called Exceptional Futures, and Roger has been helping to lead the charge with that along with Marlon. And now Exceptional Futures is going to be a part of what we do, and they're going to be doing something during the week, and it's for adults with developmental disabilities that are going to be in that group. And so now you've got someone who's here during the week that's being ministered to that fits into that particular category. And we're saying to them, we see you. We're saying to them, you matter. And we're saying to them that you belong right here in this place. And so there's a pattern that's developing. What does it all mean? I have no idea. Is it maybe that we have someone on staff one day that's going to be their job, that's going to be their calling, is to help us take these fantastic facilities that we have and be able to take care of other families that are struggling in this area and they need someone to come along beside them? Maybe that's what's going to happen. But gratitude is just saying, I see you. Gratitude is saying you matter. Gratitude is saying you belong. And so gratitude is a unique thing. It enables both the recipient who receives that gratitude, and it also blesses the one who's giving it. I call gratitude God's boomerang. You know, how many of you when you were a kid, you had a boomerang? Any of you in the room, right? And you know what? When you have a boomerang that doesn't come back, you know what you call that? A stick. And so I never could get that thing to work, so I had a lot of sticks. But when you throw out gratitude, it brings you back blessings. You know, it'll help you to break conceit in your life. You know, where you're just thinking about yourself, and the narrowness of conceit is broken when you have gratitude. When you have gratitude, it helps you to defeat anxiety. Because when you begin to realize how giving and wonderful God really is, it helps to be able to weaken that anxiety in your life. It'll take away resentment. It helps you deal with discontent in your life. Because, discontent, it brings darkness in your life. But gratitude, it brings light into your life. And I love that Matt and the team started out with that first song this morning, because that's just a song about, I've witnessed it. I've seen how God does these things in my life. And that is a song of gratitude. And they'll even close out today with a song that literally is called Gratitude. But there's something about gratitude that even lessens stress in your life, because stress, gets minimized when you have that attitude of gratitude. And so there's just something, amazing about what gratitude will do. And it helps you to deal with your own ego. I had a young leader who was asking me about, how do I talk about how God has used me to accomplish things and without being arrogant? And I told him, well, you have to be thankful for the opportunity to serve. And then what you do is you begin to thank all of the people who've helped you to be able to get there. You give them honor about the role that they played in your life. On Thursday evening, I was at Jim R. Miller Park, and Must was recognized for the 7th year in a row as being the best nonprofit in Cobb County. And they've only been doing it for 7 years for nonprofits. And so we've been very blessed that every year that we've been voted, the best nonprofit. And I did a podcast while I was there, an interview, and the person said, who are some of the people who've helped you the most in your life? Who was a coach to you? And the first person that I talked about was Zig Ziglar. And you hear me quote him at least 2 or 3 times a month. You'll hear me talk about him. Why? Because I'm deeply indebted to him. Because of his books, because of his tapes, because of his personal investment in my life. You should never forget the people who've helped you to get to where you are. And then I talked to him about Gene Hendricks, who allowed me to come into Mercer University when I wasn't able to get into Mercer University. And I still remember the moment she looked at me and said, Ike, I'm going to be your patron. And I said, what does that mean? She said, that means you're going to come into the university under my name, not yours. And I went, good, because my name wasn't working very well. And man, I've been turned down 3 straight times to get into that school. I'm always thankful. John Maxwell is someone right now. Those 3 people make such a huge difference in my life. And if you are ever at a stage where you're trying to decide, well, what does God want me to do with my life? How do I know, for instance, what vocation and what calling I should follow in my life? Always ask yourself, this is my test question, who are your 3 biggest heroes in your life other than just like family members, like your mom and your dad? Who are your 3 biggest heroes in your life? And then why are they your heroes? And I can tell you, all 3 of those people for me were always helping other people to achieve. And Zig had that famous quote that he said about life. And he said, if you will help other people get out of life what they want, then they're going to help you to get out of life what you want. And he said, but you never use that as a matter of manipulation. You use it as your philosophy of life. I'm going to help other people get out of life what they want out of life. And there's nothing that thrills me more than being able to help people get jobs, being able to, help people with their dreams. Those are the kinds of things that I love to be able to do. That's what lights me up. And then you look at a person like Gene Hendricks. Why did she light me up so much? Well, Dr. Gene never married, so she never had children. And yet she was one of the most fulfilled people I've ever met my whole life. And when I asked her, I said, you didn't choose the traditional route. You went a different way, and yet you are extraordinarily fulfilled. How does that happen? She said, well, my secret is I've learned how to give a little bit of myself away every day. I've learned how to give myself away. Zig is talking about you help other people to get out of life what they want. Dr. Jean is saying you turn around and you give a little bit of yourself away every day. And then John Maxwell would tell you this: add value to other people's lives. Add value to other people's life. How can you add value? Is it maybe giving them a word of encouragement? Is it maybe giving them an opportunity? You look for ways to be able to invest in people. And when that begins to happen, it changes everything. So if you want to get serious about gratitude, here's what you have to learn to do. You have to learn to schedule gratitude, or being busy will push it out of the way. You say, what do you mean schedule gratitude? Well, why can't you, if you're using an iPhone or an Android, it has a calendar in there. Why don't you begin to schedule in people on your calendar that you're going to call them, or you're going to send them a note, and you're just going to say, man, I want to be able to thank you. I wanted to send you a note today. It was really neat because I had someone that was here at the conference. I was not here at the conference at Piedmont this weekend, but someone who was here sent me a picture of the stage and said, guess where I am? And of course, they were here in this building. It was someone from Fayetteville, Georgia, a guy named Rick Nixon. And Rick said, I just want to thank you for having always invested in me. And that meant the world to me, that he would just take that moment to say, thank you for investing in me. Who are the people that you could send that note to? Who are your teammates that you're working with that you could take a moment to just simply say to them, thank you? Because here's what I know about my world. I don't care how much energy I have, and I've got a lot. Have y'all noticed that this morning? I had 2 Red Bulls and a coffee. I am ready to go. I will attack hell with a water pistol this morning. I'm fired up. But, if you don't find ways to make sure that you're saying thank you to people, things are just going to push their way out. And again, I don't care how much energy I have. I don't care how passionate I am about something. At some point, I will max out. When I max out, my success or failure is predicated on the people that are around my table. And I'm talking about the table now where I work. So I have a team at Must Ministries, and I have a team here at Piedmont. And I met with our whole team this week. And the first thing we do, we spend the first 30 or 40 minutes praying together. And just, who are the people in the church that we need to be praying for? What are the situations? And then we have a little leadership time where I try to invest back in them. Because at some point, I max out. And then they're the ones that my success and my failure is going to ride on those people that are with me. Then every morning, you can begin your day by expressing gratitude to God. Think of 3 people each day. Now, I always think of 3 things I'm thankful for this morning that I want to express gratitude for God. Number 1 is that I woke up. If you don't think that's a big deal, try missing it. And that means you're dead. So I'm very thankful when I wake up in the morning. And then I'm usually, because of the type of work that I do, I'm thankful that I have a home that I'm waking up in. I'm thankful that my spouse is next to me, and I'm so thankful that my spouse is my very best friend in the entire world. And so it's easy for me to just simply wake up and be thankful for at least 3 things. And by the way, at the end of the day, that's the way I try to end my day, is God, here's the things that I am thankful for. And so when you get to work, you can walk down the hall and you can just say thank you to people. If you're sending a note of gratitude and you've got a boss, copy them on the email. And that can become something in your organization that will change your culture. And so everyone on your team ought to be getting a specific thanks from you. So when you begin to have this gratitude practice in your life, gratitude shifts your mindset. And it really does. For something if you're saying right now, I need change in my life. If you need change, then one of two things needs to happen. Either one, your life changes, or number two, you do. Because waiting for life to change is a very passive solution. And when you're stuck in a problem mentality, you end up missing out on opportunities. And when you're stuck in a pattern where you're just worrying and you have anxiety, you realize that's like praying in reverse. And so you'll start missing out on opportunities and solutions that are there because you don't see them and you don't recognize those opportunities. So when you open up your eyes to gratitude practice, I promise you, things will begin to fall in place for you. They'll begin to fall in place for your business. And so you switch your mindset to see life change because gratitude creates solutions. It just does. Gratitude literally will take you out of your problem and toward a solution. Because you cannot practice prayer and anxiety at the same time. One is going to push out the other. It's the difference between having faith and fear. And so when gratitude is primary in your mind, it removes you from the complaining mode and the worry mode, and it moves you to a best outcomes mindset. And that's what makes, a huge difference. And then the other thing that I mentioned briefly is that gratitude becomes contagious. I mean, it really does. I can tell you this, if you have a healthy workplace atmosphere, toxic people can't exist in that. They don't want to be in that. And so, make sure that you're using the right kind of words. Make sure that you're taking the right kinds of actions. Instead of complaining, replace it with positive words, and you'll watch your life change. Then, real quick, because I'm already 51 seconds over. All right, here we go. How do you do it? Here's the way to develop an attitude of gratitude. Number one, write it down. Write it down. Keep a gratitude journal. Do it for 30 days. Be specific. Every day, what are you thankful for? And then watch how it will begin to change you. Now, you usually don't hear a preacher quote the Dalai Lama, but here we go. When you practice gratefulness, there is a sense of respect toward others. When you practice gratefulness, there is a sense of respect that you're going to develop toward other people. So number one, write it down. Number two, talk about it. Talk about the things that you are thankful for. You shouldn't just do it during the Thanksgiving, week. Make it a habit to talk about the things that you're grateful for all year long. You know what it does? It reinforces your feelings. W. Clement Stone, amazing guy, said if you're really thankful, what do? You share. You share what you're thankful for to other people. So write it down, talk about it, and then meditate over it. And to meditate means to ruminate, that you keep going back over. What are the things that you are so thankful for? Remember the guy I quoted earlier, William Arthur Ward? He said, God gave you a gift of 86,400 seconds a day. Have you used one of them to say thank you? Have you even used one of them to say thank you? And then express it with action. Express it with action. Write someone a note. Pick up the phone and call someone. Send them a text. Jacques Martin said, gratitude is the most exquisite form of courtesy. And then seek it. If you want to be thankful, get around people with that characteristic. Have you ever noticed there's just some people gratitude is just, it's who they are. And we've got so much to be thankful for. You know, we say here in the church, and for some of you, you may not know, although we function pretty much as a non-denominational church, the way we do a lot of things, we are part of a group of churches that I think there's probably about 38,000 of them somewhere around the country today. And do you know that if that church runs more than 500 people, and we run more than that here at this church, but here's what I found out in the last week. That means you're in the top 4%. If you run 500, you're in the top 4%. Man, we have a lot of things to be thankful for, to have gratitude for. Gratitude expressed will lead to having a generous life, and that's what we're going to talk about in 2 weeks. But seek out people that are positive. Seek out opportunities. Guys, I'll let y'all come grab this stuff. So I'm going to end it with a real quick little story. God met me at the grocery store this week. Has God ever met you at the grocery store? He met me at the grocery store this week. And you say, well, how'd that happen? Well, number one, I told you we had our all-staff meeting this week. And at our all-staff meeting, one of our members is a lady named Sharon McMillan. And Sharon's a remarkable lady. Got a nursing background, and she's gone on more mission trips to more places, gone to Brazil with our team, and has done so many things. And Sharon's husband, Charlie, passed away recently, and I did his funeral, and Charlie served his country, and I did the service up at the National Cemetery. And Sharon has been battling some health issues, cancer and other things. And in the all-staff meeting, I brought up her name, and I said, has anyone talked with Sharon recently? And no one had. And so I said, hey, make me a note that I can call Sharon this week. And so they did. And on Friday afternoon, I was driving home after work, and I called to check on Sharon and see how she was doing. And so we talked, and I prayed with her and everything, and hung up the phone. And she just always been so gracious to me. And so a little later, I go to the grocery store, and I'm at Publix. And I'm going down an aisle, and I look up and I see a lady, and I think, God, she looks so much like Sharon. And probably just because I talked to Sharon on the phone, she smiled and nodded at me. And you know how you'll go down an aisle and somebody else goes down an aisle, and then you encounter each other and you're facing each other? And she goes, Ike? And I go, Sharon? Now imagine, I just called her and just talked with her, and God put us together in the produce section to be able to talk to one another, right? And so we're just standing there, and we're talking to each other, and I'm checking up on her, and I told her how thankful I was for her. I told her about how she's one of my heroes. The way she took her gifting and she used it to serve others, and to go to places that some of you go, I'm not sure that I'd have the courage to go there. Well, Sharon has. And now she's at this different stage in her life. But I was able to look at her face to face and say, I'm so thankful for you. I thought that was really neat. Well, then I go to check out, and I get in the line, and they've bagged up all my groceries, and there was a young man that was standing there that had been putting them into the cart and everything, and he said, would you like for me to help you take stuff out of your car? And normally I go, nah, I'll do it. And I said, yeah, why don't you do that? He had on his name badge, said William. So we go out in the parking lot, and he's loading up the groceries and everything, and we're talking, and he's such a polite and courteous young man. And so as he's doing all of that, I reached in my wallet, and he told me I'm still in high school, and he told me the school he's going to is a Christian school. And so I took out a $10 bill. And I normally don't do that when I'm tipping for groceries. It's a couple of bucks or something. And I told him, I said, here you go, William. And he said, sir, we're really not supposed to take tips. And I said, well, William, I don't want to take God's money. You go to a Christian school. I don't want to drop God's money in a parking lot. Now, William, here, just take this. And so, he said, sir, William. And so I put it in his hand. I said, I want you to take this. And he said, well, thank you so much. And I said, well, William, I'm a pastor, and I admire that you're going to a Christian school. I admire that you're out here working, son. That's just really neat. And he said, you're a pastor? And I go, yeah, I sure am. And he goes, where do you pastor? I said, well, I pastor a church called Piedmont Church. And he said, you may know my grandfather. And I said, who's your grandfather? And he said the name Lindsey Tippins. If you've lived in Cobb County, you've heard the name Lindsey Tippins. He was our state representative. Well, Lindsey Tippins is a man I always used to, if you would run for governor, I will help campaign for you, because he's just straightforward, honest, good man. He said, Lindsey Tippins is my grandfather. I said, William, I've already tipped you. Can I tell you a story about your grandfather? And he goes, yeah. Now I said, when I came to Cobb County, I wanted to start a church here called North Star. And I said, we couldn't get in a school. And I said, we ended up starting out in a motel on Barrett Parkway. And one morning I was at breakfast, a few weeks into that taking place, and your grandfather walked into the restaurant. And he walked over to the table where I was sitting, and he introduced himself to me. Now, it was the first time I'd met him face to face. And he said, Ike, I understand you've started a church. Yes, sir. I'm just curious, why didn't you start in a school? I said, well, I wanted to, but we were turned down. He said, what school? And I told him North Cobb High School. And he said, wow, I'm on the school board and that's one of my schools. And he said, let me make a call. Well, a long story short, we ended up getting into that school. And North Star Church is North Star Church today because of what Lindsey Tippins did for me all those years ago. And I said, son, that's the kind of grandfather that you have right there. Every time you see North Star Church, here's what you know. It wouldn't be where it is today if it hadn't been for your grandfather. Last night, I get a text. It's from Lindsey Tippins. Hey, Ike, my grandson told me about y'all's meeting. Thank you for being generous with him and encouraging him. And I was able to send back to Lindsey and say, Lindsey, what you did for our community and the way you've served this community is incalculable. And North Star Church wouldn't be North Star Church. And I said, I got a feeling William didn't fall far from the tree of his grandfather. It just completed a circle. To just be able to be thoughtful because you got gratitude. See, I know we couldn't get into that school under my name. I would have never gotten into college under my name. And you should be thankful and you should show gratitude for the people who help you to get there. And that's what this church wants to do for you. We want to help you exchange ordinary living for an extraordinary life through the transforming power of Jesus Christ. And here's what I believe, heart and soul. It starts with a relationship with Jesus. So would you stand to your feet right now? As you stand, Father God, I thank you that I get to be on this stage and I get to share truth. I get to share 50 years of my journey and my experiences with you. God, it's my story. And for those of another generation, it would become my testimony. And my testimony is a person who has gratitude for everything that you've done for me. And God, I think the easiest sin for us to slip into is the sin of ingratitude. That we don't stop and thank you enough for the way that you've blessed us, the things that you've done. And if you've never accepted Jesus in your life, just say right now, I ask you, Lord Jesus, to come into my heart. I ask you to forgive me of my sin. And say to him, come in right now. I want to be in Christ Jesus. Thank you for forgiving my sin. And thank you for saving my soul. This morning, I'm going to be down front. If you want to come share with me, hey, I made that decision. Or if you want to meet them out in the Great Hall after this service, say, hey, I accepted Christ today. I want you to do so. I want you to remember that on April the 13th, we're going to have baptism. Some of you need to show your gratitude to the Lord for your salvation by being scripturally baptized. You can go online and you can sign up, or you can go out in the Great Hall. They'll show you how to do it. Folks, this altar and this table down front And these walls are a place for you to tangibly walk forward and say, God, thank you for my family. God, thank you for my job. God, thank you for the opportunity that you've given to me. God, I have gratitude. Gratitude will lift you out of the mud. I invite you to come today in Jesus' name.